Look at this. Right here, on my apartment balcony, I just dumped out this bucket, this cheap plastic bucket I picked up for $1, and out came all of this. Potatoes. Real potatoes. Grown by me, in a city apartment, with no yard, no garden bed, no prior experience. 90 days ago, I planted a single seed potato into this bucket. Today I am counting what came out of it. And I have to be honest with you, I did not expect this. But here is the thing. Before we get to the harvest, I need to tell you about day shibby. Because on day shibby, every single plant I had was wilting. The leaves were drooping, the soil smelled off, and I was completely convinced I had already failed. I almost threw the whole thing away. What stopped me, and what ultimately turned this into the harvest you are looking at right now, was one small adjustment that took less than 5 minutes to fix. In this video, I am going to walk you through the entire Gooship days. What I planted, what went wrong, what I changed, and exactly how many pounds of potatoes came out of a single $1 bucket at the end. I will also give you the honest math, what this actually cost me versus what the same amount of potatoes would have cost at the grocery store, so you can decide for yourself if this is worth trying. If you are someone living in an apartment, a condo, or anywhere without outdoor garden space, and you have been curious about growing your own food, but had no idea where to start, this video is made for you. And if you want to see more experiments like this, there is a subscribe button right below this video. No pressure at all. Okay, let us go back to the very beginning. Day 1. So let me start with the part that most gardening videos completely skip over, and I think it is the main reason so many people try this once, fail, and never try again. They overcomplicate it. They go to the nursery, they spend $40 or $50 on specialty soil and ceramic pots and organic fertilizer blends, and then when something goes wrong, they have no idea which variable caused the problem. I did exactly that 3 years ago. I bought everything the YouTube videos told me to buy. And I killed every single plant within 2 weeks. This time I did the opposite. I stripped everything down to the bare minimum. And the results were completely different. Here is everything I used. 1 gallon plastic bucket from the hardware store, the kind contractors use for mixing concrete, cost me about $1.25. 1 bag of potting mix. Not garden soil, not topsoil, but actual potting mix with good drainage that ran me about $4.50 at a local garden center. And 1 single seed potato. Now here is where it gets interesting. I did not buy a seed potato from a specialty catalog. I bought a regular Yukon Gold potato from the grocery store, let it sit on my kitchen counter for about 10 days until it started growing eyes, and used that. Total cost for everything, $8.50. That is it. Before I put a single handful of soil into that bucket, I did one thing that most beginner guides forget to mention, and it made a bigger difference than anything else in the entire process. I drilled Uke drainage holes in the bottom of the bucket using a regular household drill with a 1/2-inch bit. If you do not have a drill, you can heat up a screwdriver with a lighter and push it through the plastic. Takes about 2 minutes. This step is not optional. Without proper drainage, water sits at the bottom of the bucket, the roots suffocate, and you end up with exactly what I had on day shibby, a dying plant and a very confused face. I will get to that story in a moment. The last thing I checked before planting was sunlight. My balcony faces southwest, which means it gets direct sun from around 11 in the morning until about 6 in the evening. Potatoes need at least Uke hours of direct sunlight per day to produce a meaningful harvest. If you are not sure how much sun your space gets, there is a free app called Sun Seeker that maps sunlight patterns for your exact location throughout the day. I checked it the week before I planted. 7.5 hours of direct sun. Perfect. Now I had everything I needed. And on a Saturday morning in early spring, I filled that bucket 1/3 of the way with potting mix, pressed my seed potato about 4 inches down into the soil with the eyes facing up, covered it lightly, watered it until water ran out of the drainage holes, and set it in the sunniest corner of my balcony. And then I waited. The first chill days were almost boring. I checked the bucket every single morning before work, crouched down, stared at the soil, saw absolutely nothing, and went inside feeling mildly anxious. That is completely normal, by the way. Potatoes do not sprout overnight. They are sitting underground building a root system before they send anything up toward the light. Think of it like an iceberg. Most of the real work is happening where you cannot see it. By day par, the first tiny green tip broke through the surface. It was maybe half an inch tall. I took about 14 photos of it. I am not ashamed of that. By day shibble, I had separate green shoots pushing up through the soil, each one standing about 7 inches tall, leaves starting to unfurl, everything looking exactly the way it was supposed to look. I remember standing on my balcony that evening thinking, okay, I think I actually know what I am doing. And that thought, right there, was the beginning of my mistake. Because on the morning of day Shibi, I walked outside and found every single one of those shoots completely collapsed. Leaves flat against the soil. Stems bent over like they had given up. The whole plant looked like it had been out in a heat wave for a week. Except it was a mild, cloudy morning. Nothing extreme had happened. Nothing except one thing, me. I had been watering that bucket every single day since I planted it. Morning and evening sometimes. Every time the top of the soil looked even slightly dry, I added more water. I thought I was being a good, attentive gardener. What I was actually doing was slowly drowning the roots. Here is what nobody explains clearly enough in beginner content. Potatoes are not like tomatoes or lettuce. They evolved in the highland regions of South America where the soil drains fast and the roots get air between watering cycles. When you keep the soil constantly wet, the roots cannot breathe. They begin to rot from the bottom up, and the plant shows you distress through the leaves, which is exactly what I was seeing on day Shibi. The fix was almost embarrassingly simple. I stopped watering completely for days. I lifted the bucket up onto 2 small wooden blocks to improve airflow underneath. And I checked soil moisture the right way from that point forward by pushing my index finger about 8 inches into the soil. If it felt moist at that depth, I left it alone. If it felt dry all the way down, I watered slowly and thoroughly until water ran out of the drainage holes, then I left it alone again. Within days, the stems had straightened back up. Within a week, the plants looked stronger than they ever had before. It was around this time that my neighbor Margaret, she has been growing vegetables in her backyard in suburban Ohio for over 7 years, walked past my balcony, looked at the bucket, looked at me, and said something that stuck with me for the rest of this experiment. She said, "The plant will tell you what it needs. Your job is to listen instead of guess." And then she mentioned one technique she had been using for decades that I had never heard of, something so simple it almost sounds too good to be true. I'm going to share exactly what that is in the next part of this video, because it is one of the main reasons the second half of this grow went so much better than the first. What Margaret told me was this. She said, "Put straw on top of the soil." That is it. Just a thin layer of straw, about 8 inches thick, laid right on the surface of the potting mix around the base of the plant. I had seen this done in big farm operations before, but never thought about applying it to a single bucket on a city balcony. Turns out it is one of the most practical things you can do for container potatoes, and the reasons stack up fast. The straw acts as a natural insulator, keeping the soil temperature stable during hot afternoons when a dark plastic bucket sitting in direct sun can get surprisingly warm underneath. It slows down water evaporation dramatically, which means instead of watering every day, I was watering every Sam to sad days, depending on the weather. And it creates a physical barrier that prevents the soil surface from crusting over, which helps oxygen reach the root zone more easily. I added the straw on day Samshabi. By day Seshub, the difference in the plant growth rate was visible enough that I had to go back and double-check my own photos to make sure I was not imagining it. This period, days Samshabal through Yukship, is also when hilling becomes critical, And I want to spend a moment explaining why. Because most beginner videos treat it like an optional extra step when it is actually the single biggest lever you have for increasing your final yield. Hilling means adding more soil around the base of the plant as it grows taller, burying the lower portion of the stem each time you do it. The reason this matters is that potato plants produce tubers along their underground stems, not just at the root tips. Every inch of stem you bury underground becomes a potential site for new potatoes to form. I hilled my bucket sometimes total once a day, samshibwa, when the plants were about par inches tall, once a day, sashipchil, and a final time a day oshipal. Each time I added roughly to sam inches of fresh potting mix around the stems, being careful not to bury the top leaves. Now here is where I want to address something I was genuinely tempted to do around day sashibo, and based on the comments I see on other gardening videos, I know I am not alone in this. I wanted to reach into the bucket and check if anything was actually growing down there. Just a quick peek. Just to know. I am glad I did not. Here is why. When you disturb the soil around developing potato tubers, you risk breaking the delicate connections between the stem and the forming potatoes. Even a small disruption can cause a tuber to stop developing at that point. I ran a side-by-side test with the identical buckets to prove this to myself. The bucket I left completely undisturbed until day Guship produced nearly double the yield of the bucket I checked at day Orship out of curiosity. Nearly double. From the exact same seed potato, the exact same soil, the exact same watering schedule. The only variable was patience. For nutrients, I kept things simple and completely free. Every morning I emptied my coffee grounds into a small jar. Every few days I dropped banana peels into a jar of water, let them soak for sashipal hours, then use that water to feed the bucket. Coffee grounds add nitrogen, which supports leafy growth in the early stages. Banana peel water delivers potassium, which is essential for tuber development in the later stages. Both cost nothing if you are already drinking coffee and eating bananas, which I was. No specialty fertilizer. No liquid concentrate from the garden center. Just kitchen scraps doing exactly what kitchen scraps are designed by nature to do. By day Yukshibble, something shifted. The plants had stopped growing taller. For weeks they had been pushing upward, adding new leaves, getting bushier and fuller every few days. And then one morning I walked out, and everything just looked still. Settled. Like the plant had made a decision underground that I was not yet aware of. This is actually one of the most misunderstood phases of growing potatoes in a container. And if you do not know what to look for, it is easy to panic and assume something is wrong. Nothing was wrong. What was happening was that the plant had finished its above-ground work and was now redirecting every ounce of its energy downward into the tubers forming beneath the soil. The stems were thickening slightly at the base. The lower leaves were beginning to yellow at the edges. And then, around day Chirlshipsam, something I had been waiting for since the very beginning finally appeared: flowers. Small, delicate, pale white flowers clustered at the tops of the stems, almost easy to miss if you were not paying close attention. There is a long-running debate in home gardening communities about whether you should pinch off potato flowers when they appear, the idea being that removing the flowers redirects energy away from seed production and into tuber development. I looked into this pretty deeply, and the honest answer is that for container growing at small scale, it makes very little measurable difference either way. What the flowers actually signal is far more useful than any intervention you could make at that point. When your potato plant flowers, it means tuber formation is actively underway. You are in the home stretch. The best thing you can do at this stage is almost nothing. Keep the watering consistent, do not disturb the soil, and let the plant finish what it started. Around day Parship, I noticed the lower leaves were yellowing more noticeably, and a few of the stems near the base had started to soften and lean. This is called dying back, and it is the most reliable visual signal that your potatoes are approaching maturity. A lot of first-time growers see this and immediately assume the plant is sick or dying from some kind of disease. It is not. It is the plant doing exactly what it is supposed to do, withdrawing chlorophyll and nutrients from the foliage and sending them back down into the tubers for storage. Think of it as the plant packing its bags before the harvest. On day Parship Sam, I made what turns out to be one of the best decisions of this entire experiment. I stopped watering completely. Cutting off water in the final sip to 6 days before harvest causes the potato skins to firm up and thicken, which dramatically improves both the flavor and the shelf life of the potatoes after you pull them. Thin-skinned potatoes bruise easily, deteriorate faster, and honestly do not taste as good. This one step costs nothing and takes zero effort. You literally just stop doing something and the payoff is real. By day Parship Par, the plant was completely brown. Every leaf gone. Every stem dried down to the soil line. The bucket sitting in the corner of my balcony looked like nothing more than a container of dirt with a few dead sticks poking out of it. My upstairs neighbor actually asked me if I had forgotten to throw something away. And I will be honest with you, standing there looking at that dried-out bucket on day Parship Goo, knowing what might be inside but having no way to confirm it without dumping everything out, was genuinely one of the stranger feelings I have had in a long time. 90 days of daily check-ins, of adjusting and correcting and waiting, all of it coming down to one moment. On the morning of day Gooship, I carried the bucket to the middle of my balcony, set up my camera on a small tripod pointed directly at the ground, took a breath, and tilted the bucket slowly onto its side. The soil came out in one dense mass at first, holding the shape of the bucket for just a second before it broke apart and spread across the balcony floor. And there, tumbling out with the dirt, catching the morning light, one by one as they rolled free from the soil potatoes. Real, firm, golden-skinned Yukon Gold potatoes. Some the size of a golf ball. A few nearly as large as my fist. Several smaller ones clustered together like they had been keeping each other company underground for 3 months. I did not say anything for a few seconds. I just let the camera roll and stared at what was in front of me. Then I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. I lined them up, side by side on the balcony railing as I went, largest to smallest, brushing the loose soil off each one with my hand. By the time I reached the end of the pile, I had shipsaw potatoes totaling just over 7 pounds. From ear bucket. From eel seed potato. From par dollars and Oship cents, and Gooship days of paying attention. The grocery store near my apartment sells Yukon Golds for about ear dollar and Eship Goo cents per pound. 7 pounds would have cost me around $7 and Parship cents off the shelf. So no, this experiment did not save me money. But here is what it did give me that no grocery store ever could. I knew exactly where every one of those potatoes came from. I knew the soil they grew in, the water that fed them, the mistakes I made along the way, and the corrections that turned things around. And that evening, when I boiled a few of them with just a little butter and salt and ate them standing at my kitchen counter, they tasted different from any potato I had bought before. Better, somehow. Simpler. Like something that was actually supposed to be on my plate. 90 days ago, I had an empty balcony, a $1 bucket, and genuinely no idea whether any of this would work. I killed my first batch on day Shib by overwatering it every single day because I thought more attention meant better results. I almost gave up on day Sashibo when the plant stopped growing taller, and I convinced myself something had gone wrong underground. I nearly ruined the whole harvest on day Oshu by wanting to dig in and check early. And yet here we are. Shipsaw potatoes. Just over 7 pounds. Grown on a city apartment balcony with $8.50 worth of supplies, and nothing but time, and a willingness to keep going when things looked uncertain. If there is one thing I want you to take away from this video, it is not a gardening tip. It is this: the gap between wanting to grow your own food and actually doing it is almost always smaller than it looks from the outside. You do not need a yard. You do not need expensive equipment. You do not need to have done this before. You need a bucket, some soil, a little sunlight, and the patience to let something grow on its own timeline instead of yours. That is the whole thing. Everything else is just details you learn along the way. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried growing anything at home in a pot, on a windowsill, on a fire escape, anywhere? Did it work out or did it go sideways? Tell me in the comments below because I read every single one. And the stories about things going wrong are honestly my favorites because that is where the real learning happens for everyone reading along. If you want to try this experiment yourself, I am leaving the complete supply list in the description, every item I used, where I got it, and the exact price I paid. Everything you need to get started is right there, completely free. And if this video was useful to you, the simplest thing you can do is share it with one person in your life who has been thinking about growing their own food but has not taken the first step yet. That one share genuinely makes a difference for a small channel like this one. I am already planning the next experiment, and if you want to find out what it is before anyone else does, the subscribe button is right below this video. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I will see you in the next one.